Are we rolling?
Yep. Thank you.
All right. We'll call a meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I'll call the regular session of the Board of Commissioners meeting in order to at 5:10, October 21st, 2019. And we've got Commissioner Wolf von Schahn joining us from Germany. And for the record, I just want Wolf to tell us physically where he is located. If you can tell us that on your own words.
Sure. I'll crank up the German accent too so everybody knows that it's me. So I'm in a small town in northern Germany called Burghaushausen, and I'm here for work, and I wanted to make sure I can attend the meeting, so thank you for being flexible.
Okay, and the reason you're not here is because of business? You're away on business, is that correct?
That is correct.
And is there anybody with you that can hear your discussion right now?
Absolutely not. I'm in my hotel room, and I'm by myself, and I'm actually on headphones as well, so there should be no issue with this.
Okay, great. And that's my responsibility as the chairman to state for the record that those present are able to hear the member participating electronically here in this room. So that's why I just needed to ask you those questions. You good with that? All right, great. All right, so, thank you. So we have decided, because there was no questions on the financial review, that we would delay that or just omit that from this hearing, and we can take that up at the next meeting in the following month. So you, unless you have anything quick you want to say, otherwise you don't have to.
No, I'll just put out a summary tomorrow and work
Okay.
on getting my voice by next month.
Great. So I think that would be a big help for Michelle's voice.
Yes.
Maybe hopefully next month you'll be able to speak
I hope so.
a lot louder
Thank you.
to us.
Okay.
All right, great. Thanks for coming.
Sure.
Okay, then the regular session, the Board of Commissioners to discuss ongoing projects with Jamie Emery of Emery Garrett Groundwater Investigations. And you have the floor, Jamie.
Wie viel Uhr ist das in Deutschland?
So the first thing is the sodium and chloride reduction mailing to property owners.
Yes. I think you can discuss that, I guess. Ron, you gonna
Unless
discuss
you want to go a different order, that's up to you.
It's the letter, correct?
that? The letter,
Yeah.
right?
Well, let's start with yours first.
Okay. So, I have been asked by the board to provide a proposal to investigate the sodium and chloride elevation that we've been seeing in all of the, well, not all of the wells, but nearly all of the wells. And what I wanted to do to begin with is to hand out the wells that have seen the most increase in sodium and chloride. So you'll see the and you'll see in the first page, just as a summary, that well 2, well, first and foremost, you'll see the bar at the bottom is the sodium level at 20 milligrams per liter, which is the recommended level for drinking. And so you'll see that in well 2 is the yellow, that's clearly above the 20, and that this trend has been going up since 1992. If you flip to the next page, you'll see that 3 is significantly greater as the sodium and chloride have continued to rise, significantly above the 250 level for chloride and above the sodium SNO at 20 milligrams. You'll see that well 5 had the same type of increase, overuse. And well 7 has been pretty well, if you go to the next one, you'll see that 7 has been fairly stable, but still sodium is above the 20 milligrams per liter, as well as 8. So the data here is just to be the basis of the discussion. And what I've done is kind of in the proposal is go over a project understanding and objectives, describe what's happened over the last 20 years a little bit, and then broke this into several tasks. And I'm just going to summarize the task very simply. As the first one is, and I sent an email before to all of you a month or so ago about conducting a meeting with the selected stakeholders. That at this particular point in time, I think the most important thing to do is to get the stakeholders in a room, make a presentation with this data in hand, with some other issues on salt, and that would include members of the planning board, the highway department, the state highway department, because they're responsible for salting some of the roads that create the issue, Merrimack Town Manager, the Department of Public Works, which would probably include Kyle Fox, the police and fire department chiefs, Director of Community Development, and then select members of the public, maybe 2 or 3 specific people in the public that have expressed an interest in water quality in the town, and get everyone into a room, let us present the data, and then have a live discussion on this is urgent. Take the letter that you sent to the community, read that letter to them as well, and have a live discussion as to how we're gonna start approaching this problem, because it can't go on, you know?
Exactly.
And that would be the starting point. And I know it's gonna take a lot of coordination, but I had hoped that maybe if we could get authorization to begin this process tonight, that we would try to get a meeting set up in early December, before the salting starts in its earnest.
Yeah.
And and so in that task, knowing the level of communication and things that would have to do, we had a price of $5,500 to pull that together, pull the meeting together, do the presentation, and do a follow-up report with action items. So that was task number 1. Task number 2 is to provide input on the groundwater protection strategies for the planning board's consideration. That we would review things like existing subdivision regulations, building and grounds design, how do you change the design of buildings to maximize direct winter sunlight and things of that sort, review parking lot design. But I didn't put a price on that at this point because I thought that we would wait till after the meeting to refine that task 2 description. That's what I see as the beginning, but once we get into that meeting, we'll make the decision, change it, and then provide a more detailed cost estimate. So I don't want you to, I want to hold on that. Task 3 was to provide information to key property managers. Information submitted and to prepare something for the web page. That would be to identify all the property managers in the WAPA and make a decision and start to work with educating them. But I've also put that cost to be determined after we have our initial kickoff meeting. So I'd wait on that to see what falls out of that meeting and decide how much we actually could do. The 4th one is to review the existing plow routes with the town and the DOT within each of the WAPA and to determine if they can, in those WAPA areas, and I'm going to hand this out to you too, because this is probably just something you should have. These are the WAPA areas for all your wells in the town.
What you're reading from your proposal there, that's not, we don't have copies of that, right? I don't have.
We
copies
do,
of that.
we should have one.
Jill, just pass it out.
Oh, is that the one you just?
Yeah,
over
yeah,
here.
there you
All right.
And I emailed it too.
That this would be, that we would go inside of each WAPA area and meet with the state and the town plow route, do the plow routes, and make a determination as to what they can do in those plow routes to change their overall activities. Hey, Mike. That was task 4, and again, if you look at on this proposal, page 4, I did not put a price on that either, because I want to wait till we meet with the chief, meet with the highway department, and just kind of get a sense as to what they would be willing to do, and that would be a conversation we would have at that kickoff meeting. Task 6 would be to send out a mailing with educational materials to inform all MVD customers about the problems. Now, you're sending out a letter now, but this would go beyond the letter of acknowledgement and say, okay, we're gonna take it another this would be like the second letter.
Yeah.
That says, now you guys know there's a problem, here's what we want you to do about it, right? And that would
Okay.
kind of be a follow-up to that.
And would that be to everyone, all properties in the wellhead protection area?
All
Not just
no.
grandfathered?
All customers, we would do it
All
to all
customers.
customers, yeah.
Okay.
Do it a townwide. And
Oh,
I think
alright.
we'd also want to be doing, in this task, I'm talking about preparing a presentation for salt reduction on Merrimack TV and on the town's website as well, to have something that would be there.
Right.
Now, again, I didn't put a cost on that because I really want to have the first kickoff meeting and see what the amount of the town will work on. Because there's going to be certain things that I expect that maybe your staff, that Ron and Jill and others within the MVD district want to help with. The town may want to jump in and help. And so I kind of see this as a collaborative effort to do this with the consultant kind of leading the way, but having everybody engaged in this. And I didn't know really how to put a price on that yet. 7, though, is to prepare and present an educational PowerPoint presentation on sodium and chloride groundwater issues and present it to all interested citizens. And that might be something in December or January where we make a full presentation. Some of that can be pulled for the website, some of it can be put for the town manager. But that would be, and I thought there's gonna be a fair amount of work to put that presentation together, so I put a number of $5,000 on that. And then the one that I'm really also very interested in is Task 8, and that is to generate a map of sodium and chloride levels in the WAPAs using existing monitoring wells, the conductivity data loggers that we have in there now, because you have purchased data loggers, they're measuring conductivity in the wells themselves, and to collect additional sodium and chloride data in our monitoring network, and come up with a map that shows us what's our sodium and chloride across each one of these zones, right? Not only what the wells are, but now we know what it is in the aquifer as a whole. And that's gonna take a fair amount of work, and I had a price of $8,300 on that. So the total I had for those 3 tasks were $18,800. At this point in time, my most, the one I would like you to consider the strongest is Task 1 and Task 8. Because I'd like to use the Task 8 for data, just to give us more oomph when we go and meet with the communities as a whole. But Task 1 is one that we need to get started on, because it's gonna take some energy to get these guys together. So that's essentially, and everything else on the pricing would be subject to, discussion and what kind of collaboration can happen with MVD in the town. So really, I'm most interested in Task 1 and Task 8 at this moment, but I put in Task 7 because that's gonna take some effort, and maybe that's something you would wanna start up right now. So that's kind of where we are. You have the data that we're right up to speed. This is the proposal. And I'm open for the questions.
I have one, Jamie.
Yep.
So this looks like a pretty aggressive schedule to try and get things done for December. It's only a couple months. Do you think that's doable?
Well, number 8 won't be done by December, but
Right.
I'm hoping that Task 1, we can get the meeting organized by sometime in December. That's my hope.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same thing. I heard you say you were trying to get all of this done by December, but you're really only looking for,
Task 1 to
Task
get
1.
done by December, but I wanna get started before
data
the
for-
snow flies to get the water quality and start figuring out that map. So,
so would that only be one-time data, or would you be mapping how the conductivity changes over the season or something?
So, we have conductivity measurements that are being taken, I think we can take them every hour or something like that in the monitoring wells now, but there's only 5 of them. So the other ones would be one time to get a first gut, and then we would take it. So what I was hoping to do is get it before the salting season,
Yeah.
right, December, and then get another one in February, and then get another one in April.
All right, because I was gonna ask you, like, what significance any point in time in the year is. And
Yeah.
obviously, if you, I thought you were just doing one point in time and that was gonna be it.
Yeah, no, this one is to get the first one done.
Yeah.
I didn't put the money in there to do it 2 and 3 times, but once I get to find out how hard it is to sample these wells, all of them. Some of them are gonna be plugged, some of them are not gonna be, I gotta take some equipment out, put it in. Once I get that done, then I'll just give you a price to do the February and the April and then the summertime. And come to you in January probably with a new.
So are you just
proposal.
looking for a conductivity point at one day and then,
Right now I am, kind of before, to get the map
Right.
set up.
so you wouldn't need to actually install a logger then? You
Well,
could
there are
just
already
use a-
5 wells already have loggers. in
Yeah,
it.
but I mean the other ones, if you
So
wanted
the other
to
ones
do-
I won't, because that'll
Okay,
cost too much
that's what
money.
I was
That's
asking,
to go and
yeah.
pump them and sample them.
So you just put in a one-time conductivity meter, take
Right.
the reading and move on basically.
So what I kind of visualize is that we'll see a map with the sodium chloride levels in the fall, one in the middle of the winter, one at the end of the winter, and one in the spring, and see if, how this
How
thing
it changes.
changes, over that time. And that's gonna be helpful, I think, because we wanna be able to give the public as much information as we can. We have the pumping wells, that's clearly the driving force behind the study, but I think we also wanna know, is the sodium chloride higher in this portion of the recharge area than the other portion? Can we eliminate and work more diligently in the western edge of this well recharge area as opposed to banging everything down on the eastern edge? Because maybe the eastern edge isn't a problem, some of that. And we may find out that we're gonna have to expand our monitoring network, and that'll be part of that discussion. But I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get to the point of saying, okay, these are our hot spots. And maybe in these hot spots, we get it narrowed down to 3 or 4 really key things we gotta get done. Right? And that's why I've kind of held back putting prices on everything until I kind of get my head around it.
Jamie, I had a discussion with Dan today, we've got some of our other divers that are low, the batteries are low, I'm gonna be replacing them.
Okay.
It'd be worth it, if I was replacing them anyways, if we get the CTD divers, we could move some around and put those where you
That's a
need
great
them.
idea, yeah, we could do that. And I can come before we can give a proposal on that for the next time, if we wanna, if we're down low on our batteries, because they're 5 or 6 years old? It must be
8.
8 years old, they're past their
Yeah.
usability.
We
They're
got-
still being used, but they're,
We've got some down to 69%, that's what Ryan went out today and
Oh, he
looked
did?
at and
Okay.
dumped some of them, so I think there's 3 of them that are getting that low. So I was looking at doing 3 to 5
Yep.
for the order, so, I can look at the pricing and see what we can get out of that for CTDs.
that'd be great. Okay?
So I have a question, how do you think we should handle our well 7 and 8 are in a confluence of 3 towns, 4. We got wellhead protection area in,
So I have a task 5, it says coordination with neighboring municipalities.
oh yeah,
And that is something that I wanted to talk to the town manager here in our meeting that we have on the salt to see what strategies they think we could incorporate. But ultimately, that's a good point, Don, because I wanted, in task 5, you go to page 3, it says coordination with neighboring municipalities. This would include 1, contacting the neighboring municipalities of Amherst, Hollis, and Nashua to encourage reduced salt application on local roads within the MVD WAPA areas and to find out if any salt reduction measures are being considered now. And 2, developing a memorandum of agreement to establish low salt areas in the sections of Route 3, Route 101A, and Industrial Drive that are located within the WAPAs. And then 3, developing and implementing a system to track winter salt use, because that's really what we don't have. We don't have a tracking mechanism to say how many tons of salt are being put into this area. And that's what we really need. In order for us to manage it, we gotta know what we're putting it in.
right.
Because it's one, and that's a real strong aspect, I think, of this overall mitigation program. And that's a question that I wanna pose directly to the town, I wanna pose directly to VDOT, and in that meeting, I think, what I was hopeful to do, is to have a series of questions that we have pulled together, and maybe this board should weigh in on those questions after I've drafted something up, and say, here's additional questions we'd like to have answered at this meeting. so that, and then hand those questions out to the best of our ability before the meeting. It might be later December, I mean, this is a lot to ask in a short time period. But once these letters go out, which, did they go out? I think they did, no, they're going out.
Not yet, not yet.
Once the letters go out, then we can kind of follow up with this process, and I would send out a letter to all these folks.
Because right now, is it safe to say that Amherst, Hollis, and Nashua portions that are in the wellhead protection areas, that there's no salt restriction right now?
Not that we know of,
Right,
and that's something we need to learn.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
'cause
it definitely is something would be important to,
Yeah. And I think what we need to do is take it to the next step and get signs up on the highways and the
Absolutely,
roads that
yeah.
says you're in a salt, you're in the recharge area of public supply well. Less
Absolutely.
salt is being used. I mean, the Cape does it, because the Cape is entirely dependent on groundwater.
yeah,
There's no surface water sources on the Cape Cod, and there's, a lot of people living down there.
and I know there's that brook that crosses under 101A that goes into Witches Brook and Pennachuck Brook, so we could be getting a lot of salt
laden
wash
from
from
there.
from
Exactly.
right there.
Yep.
And I know 7 and 8 seem to be our best wells as far as lowest and more steady sodium and chloride levels.
Yep.
And it'd be nice to keep that steady and not increasing.
Increase it. And I think to a certain extent, the peat helps in that regard. I think,
Yeah.
I think, we found quite a bit of peat out there, obviously putting in, I'll talk about that a little bit.
Right.
But so I'm asking tonight if it would be acceptable to you to consider at least tasks 1 and task 8, which would be 5,000 and 8,300, which would be 13,300.
Right.
Did I have that right? No, excuse me, 5,500. 5,500, and so
So
it'd be
88,
13,800.
yeah, 13.
Yeah.
I think it's a good start. I think we definitely need to address that. So road salt is definitely a concern when we look at these graphs, and again, to protect our investment that we're moving forward on all this PFAS treatment, it would make a lot of sense to make sure we protect that investment so that we can make sure that we don't have issues develop from road salt contamination that would render those wells problematic, so. If someone else wants to make a motion to accept tasks 1 and 8 on Jamie's proposal, October 21st, 2019. We can entertain that motion if anyone so feels inclined.
So moved. Wolf is moving.
Moved by Wolf,
Second.
second by Joe.
Is this the number you're supposed to use?
Just moving on away.
I'll cross it out if you just want to do 13.8.
08 edition,
Yeah.
05911,
05-9011.
on the back page,
Yeah.
terms and conditions,
Right.
signed.
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
All right, so it was moved by Wolf, second by Joe. We'll do a roll call. All those in favor signify by saying aye. We'll start with Ken Ayers.
Aye.
Joe Comer.
Aye.
Myself, John Preventure, aye. And Wolf.
Aye.
Aye by Wolf, so that's a 4-0-0. So yeah, you're approved to go ahead with that.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Jamie, do you wanna initial which ones or do something that says, so that we're signing?
Yep, I'm gonna do it right now.
That's good. I think that's a very comprehensive, I like that meeting to start with, because then it puts everyone on notice that.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to go. Okay, you wanna sign that? Okay, so let's move, my next discussion is going to be on Witches Brook. It won't take very long, but it's going well. As you know, we've got Governor's Council approval, we move forward. We've installed the piezometers, we've actually gone and collected the PFAS samples in Witches Brook, and we've actually gone and started collecting the samples on the monitoring wells. So the next step right now is to get the water quality data back in the next couple of weeks. We've submitted our interim report. Because this is money that's attached to federal agencies, we have to submit a summary update periodically every 3 months, and we've done that, and that's been approved. And so we're on schedule essentially since the time we were given authorization. So hopefully the next time I see you, I'll be able to give you some water quality data. So that's a good start. We've had the guys down here working pretty hard over the last couple of weeks.
So just for the record, that's on the agenda, that's the Witches Brook PFAS investigation that Emery and Garrett was authorized several months ago. And that was partially funded by Source Water Protection Grant
Correct.
of $20,000.
20,000, and then an additional 12 was
12.5 by MVD, right?
correct.
Now, if I recall your scope of work, the goal, is it to identify if the PFAS in the aquifer around wells 7 and 8 is coming from aerial deposition or from groundwater contamination?
Yes, yeah. So I'll just read briefly the statement of the project is focused on assessing whether it's likely that PFAS contamination recently discovered by DES in Witches Brook, the surface water that flows past the Amherst Industrial Park and then past the 2 MVD production wells, is being directly or indirectly derived from aerial deposition and or from local groundwater sources. This is of key importance to understand if possible additional protection measures can be taken for 2 local production wells, 7 and 8, serving the MVD. As part of this, it's important to understand the role that peat plays in PFAS delivery to surface water and groundwater. The Witches Brook is surrounded by vast formations of organic peat, sometimes reaching thicknesses of 10 to 15 feet. The peat is expansive and can be measured in square miles of distribution, because you know it just goes throughout in the local area. Witches Brook serves as a significant recharge source to the Merrimack Village District wells 7 and 8. Consistent levels of PFAS reported by DES have been shown to be elevated along approximately 2.5 mile stretch, so all the way from the industrial park down to the railroad on the other side crossing. That extends from the South Merrimack Road to more than 1 mile north of the intersection of Pennachuck Brook. The elevated levels of PFAS measured in the surface water is downgrading of significant known PFAS contamination sources at the Amherst Industrial Park, which has PFAS levels in the groundwater exceeding 1,000 ppt. So at the industrial park, we're seeing that level. Although this study will not constitute a full investigation of PFAS sources in the immediate area, it will help us to MVD to better understand what protection mechanisms might be available to them to secure their wells from further and more adverse PFAS impacts. These 2 wells serve as a critical groundwater drinking water sources that have more than $5 million invested in an iron and manganese treatment plant. The wells currently combine to provide more than 35% of the drinking water for Merrimack MVD. So that's kind of the scenario that we're looking at, is to kind of figure out where is what's happening with the PFAS from the aerial and from the groundwater. Now, if we determine there's a ton of PFAS in the peat itself, then it's likely to be an aerial issue that we've got, which we know there's an aerial component to it.
Okay.
But we also don't want to be blindsided by 1,000 ppt, coming down into the system, and so we're going to have better data, and I'm excited about it, and DES is excited because it's the first study of its kind, really, to actually look at.
So that's what I was gonna ask you, exactly how you make that conclusion, whether it's one or the other. So if it's found broadly in the peat deposit, that would mean it's.
Well, I think if we're seeing through 200, 300 ppt in the peat deposits, that's accumulated over the time of deposition, then there's not much we're going to be doing. If it's low, super low in the peat, and it's higher in the surface water, then we know that it's coming from something else.
Right.
And and I think it's easier for us, you know, well, I don't wanna say anything's easy right now, but we need to kinda know where our responsible parties are, and this is one step towards that end. I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Great timing.
yeah, it is good timing. So that's where we're at that project, which I'm excited to say, and then I have one more that I wanted to share with you, and that's the artificial recharge.
What's the timing on the Witch's Brook?
Oh, I think it's in the spring.
Yeah,
That's
to
when
have,
we have everything done, it's in the spring.
okay.
The artificial recharge has been interesting. I have spoken with Brandon, Wolf had asked a couple of questions about soils and the impacts, you know, if we add water that's low in PFAS, will it have a, you know, adverse impact on the quality, et cetera, et cetera. And we've talked about that a little bit in the past. We're also talking about what are our fatal flaws to taking water out of the Merrimack? Can it be done? And ironically, which I didn't know, and probably I'm the last to know, is that Pennachuck is actually going full bore on taking an intake out of Merrimack right now, because their Pennachuck Brook is contaminated.
Right. My
So-
understanding, we asked Don where
They're doing it now.
a month and a half ago,
That's
he
a-
said
that's online.
100% of the Nashwa's drinking water is the Merrimack River. They're not even using Witch's Brook anymore. Right? Is that what he said?
Pennachuck Brook, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's on, it's active,
Yeah.
that intake is
I
active.
think they're working on another one, but right now, they've got all of the drinking water in Nashwa's coming from Merrimack River.
Yeah, well, that may be, because then this one that's going on now is a pretty significant intake, and I was
Yeah.
not aware of it, so this has to be a second one.
I think it is.
And it is, I can tell you where it's just north, it's just south of the Budweiser plant, on that big piece, I'll show you real quick. Are you familiar with it?
I'm not familiar with the location, but I knew that it was online.
So that's Budweiser plant here, and that's where the intake is. And we did some geophysical surveys down there a long time ago when we were looking, remember, I don't know if you
I
remember that, Joe.
inspected the buildings.
You did, so you know. So you know.
So it's just north of the wastewater outfall then, right?
Correct.
Which is a good thing.
It's just north of wastewater.
Okay.
So,
We don't wanna be the other way around.
so why is that important? It's important because they've set the precedent for getting an intake, right? So people are familiar with that. Now, if you do an intake on the river, you gotta go through the wetland permit, which is what we're doing in Dover. And that may include some federal permitting. And when I talked to Brandon, he said, you know, if you were able to put an inclined well underneath the Merrimack River, like what Manchester's doing now, they put a series of which GZA, you know, we did, put that collector well system under the Merrimack River, and they're taking out 6 or 7 million gallons a day. You would not have to go through the wetland permit issue. You would just do a large groundwater withdrawal permit.
Because that wouldn't be considered a surface water.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that is an option that we have available to us. He did say that the wastewater line goes down the railroad. And the railroad, and there is concern that there may be some leakage, and so we would have to demonstrate as part of the process that we don't have another source of PFAS. But the PFAS and his data on PFAS in the Merrimack River is consistent with ours, that they're seeing 2 PPT to 6 PPT is kind of the range, high and low. And we saw, I think, 3 or 4 PPT when we did our investigation. So that source of water is really good. He said the level of the river is not gonna be a concern typically. There's a ton of water available, and the amount that we'd be taking would be limited. I did contact the railroad, and the railroad has given me their basic mantras. This is what you have to do. You have to put a 12-inch sleeve underneath the railroad, and it's got to go to the edge of the easement and so forth and so on. And they have a whole litany of things that have to be done, but it's doable. And quite frankly, Pennachuck's having to do it now. He was familiar with the Pennachuck crossing that the railroad where he mentioned and he was, I don't know how familiar he was, but, so they're not familiar with this proposal because it came out of the blue, but it is the first it's the first dialogue that we're having. And so I feel like that, in terms of that cost, I've had a couple of thoughts about that, but it's probably gonna be in the 30 to 50,000 range to get underneath that river, underneath that railroad. The rest of the costs we haven't wrapped up in our head yet, because I wanted to get through the whether or not it's doable. If the
Yeah.
railroad came back and said, no way, no
Right.
chance you can do it, then we didn't need to move any further. So that took a long time, took a lot of time to get through Pan Am to get to that. They're not, but they did respond, and that was good. So, that being said, the issue of taking surface water and putting it into the soils and causing the increase or decrease of PFOA or PFOS is really, Grant and I talked about that quite a bit, and essentially, if we have concentrated, we have some areas where the soils don't have any or very limited PFOA and PFOS. We have some that have higher, and as we discussed it, the simplest thing is if we have problems where we want to put the infiltration, we may just excavate the material and take it away, right? And we don't need to necessarily pour it through because most of this PFOS is in the shallow soils from the aerial deposition of St. Cobain.
Okay.
Right, we're not seeing it at greater depths. So that's one option, but the other option is we have some flexibility in where we put the basins. And all of that's gonna come out in the pilot testing that we do, because we've gotta demonstrate that we're not gonna create a problem. So that's already kind of built in the system as part of the process, so I'm
Will
not.
you be using on-site soils to run the pilot tests and flush water through?
Right, and we'll probably use the water from Merrimack to flush it, so instead of putting, not taking it from the river, because we wanna wait, if it doesn't work with the water that's available right at that site, coming in from the town, we would, that's what we'd use. So that would be, that doesn't seem to be a fatal flaw, the railroad doesn't seem like a fatal flaw, and then the third issue was Ron and I spoke to the proposed landowner out there. And they're gonna make that piece on the other side of the railroad a park. That's their intention. They're not planning on developing that, and they're talking about putting 300 units in. So they were very much open to having anything that, they didn't say yes, but they were totally open to it, and didn't see it as a problem to run the pipeline from the river across their property to the railroad and over to your property. That was, and we dealt with their engineer who represents the owner. We didn't speak directly to the owner, but he's worked with them quite a bit, and he's like, this seems like something that would work for us, and, there's a lot of mutual interest involved, so. The biggest issue is gonna be Longa dump. What are they gonna do with that? Are they gonna have to do an environmental site, how much environmental site assessments are gonna have to deal with? But I will,
That would be down gradient of us, right? The longer dump.
they are
Downgraded,
downgraded,
yeah.
correct, yes, that's correct. Yeah. And we determined during a detailed assessment that the contribution area from the Longa dump site to those wells under max pumping conditions was like 10 or 11% or something, and that, I think that's.
I got a less than one, I thought it was less than 1%.
Oh, maybe it's, yeah, that's right, sorry, it was less than 1%, that's right. I got one, yeah, it was less, I think it was less than 1%, so we didn't see that as a threat, so when I mentioned the concept that not only we're talking about using the artificial recharge for lowering the PFOA, PFOS, but that we would enhance the recharge, try to get back to the original permit, and improve the sodium and chloride levels, which is critical. That triple benefit is something that, it still seems like it's a win-win. So we have a little bit more work to do on that, but I just wanted you to be aware that we've crossed 3 of the fatal flaws that I was worried about.
Yeah.
And I think we're, not to say that you're gonna do it tomorrow, but, I
No.
think there's some opportunities.
Did you happen to mention any concerns that, to Brandon, if DES would have concerns about groundwater under the influence with the microparticulate analysis or anything like that?
Yeah, so the issue, this conversation's come up before, is because we're more than, 50 feet away from surface water, and we will keep the artificial basins away from that.
From the well.
Yeah, and then in fact, we're gonna keep them hundreds of feet away, that the MPAs, there should be no reason to see any kind of particular analysis
Yeah.
that would fail. And we just haven't seen it, we've never seen that, so, that's gonna be part of the pilot testing too, to
And
make sure.
you've
the
done
pilot-
that at other artificial
Oh,
recharge
yeah.
sites, and
Yeah,
it's not.
been
hasn't
it's been a
concern.
priority evaluation. Not just microparticulate, but coliform bacteria,
Right.
color, because
Right.
we have some really bad colored water in Dover that we put in these artificial basins, and we see no color 100 feet away.
Really,
Yeah, it's amazing.
that's good.
Yep. So, all that would be part of the pilot test. So if we get through this, then I'll write something up, we'll send that to you, and then the next conversation would be sometime this winter, do we wanna consider doing a pilot test in the spring?
And
something
you're
like that.
still doing a, sort of like just a kind of a cursory cost estimate on
Cursory
some
cost.
infrastructure and
Yeah.
stuff like that too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I don't know if Underwood is helping you out with any part
Not
of that.
Sure, I
yet.
will be.
Yeah, they will be. I wanted to get through the railroad, that was my biggest concern.
Right.
So,
I mean, that's kind of what we're trying to figure out, is like almost a menu list of all of the cost items and put a number in there. And
Right.
kind of total it all up and see what we would be looking at for a conservative total number.
Yeah.
Including all engineering, everything, and if you could present that to us at some point in the future, then we can compare that against, all right, well, we know
All your
what
other options.
cost for developing a whole new well in a whole new
Right.
area, and does it make sense to not have to do that if artificial recharge can
Right.
augment infrastructure we already have in place?
Right. No, and we did do a kind of a preliminary estimate, and I'm hoping to get that a little bit firmer.
Yeah, right,
Yeah, no, we're working towards that.
all right.
But that's all I have for tonight, and hopefully that's, that's a lot. But I appreciate, I haven't been down here in a couple of months, so
Yeah, yeah.
happy to be back.
I just
Good.
got one quick thing to go back to the sodium and chloride, cause, I shot this over to Jamie, the letter.
Yeah,
So the last thing that, the graphs that you gave us today, can you
Mhm.
send me those tomorrow? Because the way the letter's supposed to go, it's supposed to incorporate those
Sure.
in there, and they look like they're more updated than the ones I have.
Sure, yep, absolutely,
Do you want me to send you an email?
yes. That'd be
are they
awesome.
updated, or,
I think these were updated, yeah. It says 18, but it's beyond that, so
Oh, it
it's
goes into,
19, yeah. I'll make sure, I'll double check it, I think, 12/31/18, so everything beyond that is 19.
it looks like a lot of variability at well 3 from, it's kinda hard to see, I'm curious if these months are all in the winter time or anything, not necessarily, I guess.
No.
So, well, 2 and 3, I would say 12/31/18,
Mm.
and the other 7 and 8 say 1/1, and then past that as well.
Oh, good point, on 5, well, 5 because it stopped being used at that point.
2, 3, 5, and 2. All right, I'll just shoot you off an email
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yep, I can get that to you.
Thanks.
Sounds good. Okay,
So do we wanna talk about this letter at this point too?
Yeah,
I'm fine with all the edits to it, so. This is a letter where a road salt water quality form letter that's going out to all property owners that are grandfathered in the wellhead protection areas, that do not need to legally use alternatives to salt, they can use salt. And we're sending a letter out to ask them if they can change their salting practices to use different de-icing agents, even though they're not required to at this point, because of the effects that it's been having on our wells. So that's the for the viewing audience. So I don't know if we're looking for any official vote of the board to go ahead and send the letter out. I think we actually did that in the previous meeting, right?
Yeah.
So this is just refining the language basically in here, right?
Send it out.
Yep.
And the goal is still to get these graphs into this?
Small enough but readable.
Yeah, I don't know if we need all of them or just maybe,
I think we went back 10 years on, not 10 years.
yeah, I don't know if, well, it makes sense to have wells 7 and 8 in there. Because those kind of show a flat, sort of flattish trend anyway, and they only go back 5 years.
So just the ones of concern, 2, 3.
Yeah, I would say 2, 3, 5. I don't see 4 here.
Yeah, I didn't put 4 in, but 2, 3, I would agree with that, 2, 3, and 5 would be fine.
Yeah.
Because you don't
I
wanna
don't want too
overwhelm
much,
them.
yeah. Now, what size, document is gonna be,
Not
is
sure
it gonna be
if
like a
it's
full size like that so they can actually see, or something a lot smaller than this?
Well, it's not, yeah, it's not gonna be, we were gonna do the ones that are about this big that would give a fair depiction of how the trend is running on there.
Yeah.
But
The other
we'll
question.
see, I mean, I'll have paper graphics kind of figure out how they can get it in there, make it readable.
Yeah. How many, of these letters roughly are we sending out, like how many properties have been identified, do you remember that number?
I don't know, we did have a list generated.
It's not a massive, overwhelming number to send out, right, it's nothing like the PFAS MCL notice that went out to
No,
everybody in
no,
town,
no.
obviously. Okay,
Yikes.
all right, great. Well, glad to see you moving along on that Witches Brook study. I'm very interested in that one, obviously.
Yep, thank you. Yep,
Any kind of updates on that in a couple of months or something, that would be great.
we'll do it.
Good,
No, thank you.
thanks for coming
Great,
out.
thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hey.
Good to see you.
All right, we're moving on to item number 2, capital improvements with Underwood Engineers. We're a little ahead of schedule. I know you're probably expecting Pete to show up.
I
at
am, I
6
just
o'clock.
texted him to say I'm on early,
Yeah.
because he's got all the notes.
I was not long-winded.
I was going, Jamie, talk more.
Well, I could probably, if I had the minutes.
No, there's stuff I can do, I was gonna do anyway, so, I mean, and Pete's, I just texted him, he says he'll be here in 5, and that was,
All right.
and that was a few minutes
Thanks a
ago.
lot, Jamie.
Yeah, thank you.
See you, Jamie.
I know. Auf Wiedersehen.
No response.
Have a good night. Sorry, I was muted.
So, I'll start with wells 2 and 3, because that's what I have on the agenda first.
Sure.
So just to give you an update of where we are, we have a site plan that's pretty well complete, and there's been a lot of back and forth with Ron and Don on that. That, takes into account a potential future office, tries to take into account expandability, and that's something we've been thinking about more with concerns that have been raised on the potential need to have iron and manganese treatment for well 2. And I wanted to ask, has there been any actual results that shows that there's elevated iron, or is that a concern if we're pumping at a higher level?
That's just a concern of pumping at a higher level than I
Okay.
have. And I know it's one that Kevin had as well, and we're just bringing it out that.
Okay, I didn't know if there were actually results where we were going like, oh no, we have iron and manganese increasing in these wells. I mean, in well 2.
According to this, everything is, this is right through, I'm looking at October 4th. And iron has been consistently less than 0.05, except in a year ago, October, it was 0.107, which is still below the 0.3 anyway.
Yeah,
so
I
we're
saw that
okay.
one too, and I hadn't seen the last quarter, so I didn't know if something had popped up.
And the manganese, It's been consistently through 2017 at less than .01. It only creeped up to .016 in April, .025 in July, and then again back down to below .01. So the limit on that one is .05. So we've only gotten halfway to that limit. So it's still performing well at this point, well two. Again, but if we're thinking of stressing it at a higher pumping rate at some point in time, that's kind of what we're.
Right, and that's been a concern for a long time, because when we were doing the water supply evaluation, and there was essentially more water needed to meet future max day and even, current max day, that seemed like the low-hanging fruit. Well 2 was approved for 1,500 gallons a minute, but was being run pretty much at 1,100 gallons a minute, I think.
Right on that, because we're 12. but-
1,200, yeah, so that, we said, well, we could immediately do that, and the concern from Kevin primarily was, that's our best well, we don't have iron and manganese in that well, and I'm really concerned about upping the capacity and potentially expanding the cone out to a point where you might impact iron and manganese, which is a valid concern. So, at this point, there's no, you can step right up here, Pete. There's no plan, and I discussed this with Don earlier today, the capacity of the treatment plant, I'm talking about well 2 iron and manganese.
Okay, yeah.
The capacity of the treatment plant is going to be designed to treat 1,500 gallons a minute, the GAC capacity of the 1,500 gallons a minute from well 2. But there, at this point, is not a plan to run well 2 at 1,500 gallons a minute. And we have to talk about whether we put a pump in there that's even capable of that. Because we will need to replace the pump because of the changes in head on that. So that's something, that's a bridge we still need to cross.
This well 3 you're talking about?
I'm talking about well 2, actually.
yeah.
So well 3, that's gonna be pumped at about 1,000 gallons per minute. And that's what we're treating for iron and manganese. And the current size of the planned vessels are planned for 1,000 gallons a minute. Well 2, if we were to add 1,500 gallons a minute of iron and manganese treatment capacity, that's a huge nut. That's a big, added expense in terms of building size, vessels, and everything else. For what is right now, a maybe if we start pumping that higher. So.
So do you leave floor space in the building for that or not? I mean, it seems like it'd be
Yeah,
prohibitive.
That would be a lot of floor space.
Because if you figure, so if you have 1,000 at 3 and 1,500
Be another
at
one and
2,
a half
so it's
times.
1.5 times. We have 4 10-foot vessels, so you can need 6 10-foot vessels, and the floor space for that would be huge. But so what we can do is we can kind of lay out those 4 vessels, with the thought that could be added on to. And then, maybe even the building turns into an L shape, and to have to do that, we'll have the structural size, the trusses, to beef up having another roof, sort of tying into it. So you don't have to touch any of the roof, you gotta
If
pull
we
off
needed
the.
to do an addition, you're
Right,
talking about.
yeah, so you can pull off the asphalt shingles, and then you can, lay down those cripples, rafters, and then get your valleys in there. But that will, structurally, it'll be all set for it, for roof wise. Because that's really nothing for structural people to do. When they're throwing in their calculations, they throw a couple more support members on, webbing on the inside, and it doesn't cost anything for that.
So would you think
Design.
you would not necessarily need to modify the site layout circulation to accommodate a future?
So we could do on
expansion?
that, we could possibly do that, or you have plenty of room there now that you could just do your addition and just move the road out afterwards.
later,
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because it'd probably be a lot of kind of wasted space
There'd
right
be
now.
a lot of wasted space right now. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for something that we don't know that we would
Yeah.
actually need.
Right.
And you would have to get in there digging anyway, so that you're probably going to end up damaging the road and all that kind of stuff. So.
Okay.
So we'll try to put some, some T's in the piping, so you can have, thoughts of where pipes can be leading out from and coming back from and stuff like that. So that's, I think that's small costs that we can,
Yep.
stick in there, but not
So
actually.
you'd be
put the
looking at
vessels.
a building addition in the location of the building that's near where the green sand filters already are for well 3. The green sand filters are
Yeah,
gonna be for
that's
well
right.
3.
Right, yeah.
And then we'd also be looking at future building expansion if we needed to do additional
Resin, yeah.
resin vessels.
Yeah.
So as long as those both expansions can work together.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna have to
That's-
look at, yeah,
yeah,
right,
right.
exactly, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Right, yeah, this is sort of a new curveball, that, you
Yeah.
know, so, but I just wanted to bring it up. And I wanted to
Right.
find out if there were some results that I didn't know about that were alarming, so.
Don't look like it, which is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was just starting in on 2 and 3, so
Okay.
I'll keep going on that.
Yeah.
And now Pete's giving me a nice bulleted list. But the survey has been done. We just recently got the survey back, and I think there's a few additional areas that we want them to pick up and.
Yeah, we gotta do a little bit of work, yeah.
Yeah, there's some stuff that, you know, we're talking to them about what we want them to finish off with.
Have they incorporated property boundaries on there, or just still topographic?
They do have property bounds on there.
It does?
Yeah,
All right, that's
yeah.
good.
Yeah, they found a few of them right along Continental, and then there's, so as you, if you're coming down Industrial, at the intersection, you go straight to Dunkin' Donuts, they have the bound at the corner of that intersection, then they have the next one on the, you know, on the, so it'd be the west side of that little Dunkin' Donut road, you know, and then they have the one going over, so it does kind of lay out that jog, so you see how much you own at that intersection.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and the geotech has been done for the site. So we have borings done for where the building is and where the basins are. Obviously not for the raw water main yet.
No, they
Get to
did.
that next. Oh, they did that?
They did the borings along that, yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay. I
We
thought-
don't have any report back yet, but the borings are done.
Okay. Yeah, we don't have the geotech report yet, but the field work is done. Building layout, we were just talking a little bit about that. You know, the building layout is something that, you know, we're working on and working on the process piping layout and so forth. We may have to adjust if we're talking about, you know, potentially adding more green sand filters. And then the RSSCT, you know, we've gotten those results back. I don't know if we have them all back, but what we're getting so far is, you know, for the regulated compounds, you know, we're getting better than 18 months before breakthrough. With the short chain compounds, you know, we're getting some confusing results. You know, the breakthrough on those is shorter, which we would expect, you know, maybe 5, maybe 6 months. In some cases, we're getting higher effluent than influent. And so before we make any determination of exactly what's going on, we're also trying to enlist some help, and we've talked about this on peer review from UNH. And we're right in the process right now of contractually working back and forth with UNH on getting Jim Malley on board to help us look at some of this to see, you know, maybe get some more eyes and some more treatment expertise on what may be going on there.
Yeah.
All right, so, because it's, you know, so in terms of regulated compounds, we know, or at least we, you know, as much as you can believe the RSSCT results, you know, that looks like what we've been expecting in the past, and anywhere better, you know, over a year and 18 to 19 months, right, on those.
So the significance on the short chains is that it was presented for the Warren articles that the goal would be PFAS-free water, and that was a goal, so that's why we gotta kinda look at the short chains and see what's happening with those. And
Yeah, oh, exactly, we're
what was
not,
the name of what was the phenomenon of when the short chain, it gets all removed, but then it releases more than what's coming in?
I think they call it roll-off.
Rollover.
Roll
Yeah,
over,
I
yeah.
saw the paper, I read that, I just couldn't remember what the name was, but.
Yeah.
Right,
So that's the phenomenon that we didn't expect. We knew that they break through earlier, but we didn't know that it's almost like they re-release what was filtered back into the water at even a higher concentration than what's coming in. And then it goes back down and basically the influent is equal to the effluent.
right, so you get this little spike,
Right,
and we're trying to see what we can do about that.
right.
Because the attachment of those short chain ones, their attachment is weaker than the longer chains.
Right.
So as the longer chains come down, then
They
some of
almost
those.
bump off the short
Yeah,
chains.
right.
And this is in the lead filter, so just for anybody that's listening, we would have a lag filter that would hopefully be essentially fresh carbon that would be catching
It would be fresh, yes.
some of those, so
Yeah.
there's some logistics there that we need to
There's some logistics, and yeah, we have to talk about, what does that do to the lag vessel, in terms of its loading and, because when we go to change out, that becomes the lead vessel.
Right.
And then is that gonna lead to a shorter change out when we have to reverse the other way? So these are some of the things that we're trying to figure out
It
right
would
now.
be good to know if the long chains bump off the shorter chains, because then the lag vessel wouldn't have seen any longer chains, because those wouldn't have broken through yet.
Right.
So maybe it's not quite as dire as we would think it would be. I don't know if Jim Malley or anybody else has any experience in that, but maybe that's something we can talk to him about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what we're just looking to get more eyes and more brain power
Right.
on this.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Good.
Let's see, on wells 2 and 3, the raw water main.
Yeah.
So the raw water main, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, and maybe you should talk about that, Pete, because you're more familiar with the layout and the
The asbestos concrete.
problems
Yeah.
with pipe bursting potentially.
Yeah, so we are looking at some different options of the routing for that. The first two options we were looking at was coming down Continental Boulevard or along the river behind the old atrium building. When we did our initial walkthrough, of the site, that area down by the river, that didn't seem feasible, looking at, the train you had to go through, and it looked like the, ledge was shallow. It looked like it was, it was gravel operations in there. It looked like they kind of went down to
And
the
that's
the
along
ledge.
Natticook Brook you're talking about?
Yes, it is, yeah. So that didn't look too good, so when we were going out onto the road. Subsequently, we have done some, environmental, researches, and, because of some of the permitting that we have to do. And then we found out down by that river, there's also some spotted turtles and some other, species that is going to make it even tougher to go down there. So I think that river area is probably not the route we want to go through. So then, we're talking with Ron, we were thinking about carrying up through the MVD maintenance area, going across Continental Boulevard to Camp Sargent Road, and then there's an existing 10-inch AC line, which is asbestos cement, and then we were thinking about pipe bursting, which is a trenchless technology where you get into the pipe and you end up having a rod going down attached to a machine that attaches to a sort of a reamer, and it breaks up the pipe and then forces it out, and then you can drag in another pipe in along it. So it's it's kind of a neat technology. So you don't have to
having to do open excavation.
open
along the
excavation and stuff
roadway.
like that, and it can go quicker and stuff like that. So there's you don't have all the police details or restoration, pavement repair, all this other kind of stuff that you might have go along with a open excavation. But then when we started doing some research on that, there's some environmental issues with the asbestos cement. So that pipe is no problem when it's in the ground. When it's wet, there's no fibers coming off of it, so it's a totally safe pipe to use for a water system. But when it gets dry and you're trying to, pipe burst it, now you're going to be, breaking
Fracturing
out that,
pieces.
right? Yeah. So there's some environmental issues that go along with that. So that doesn't look like a totally viable option. So we're looking at possibly, maybe we a couple options are either you trench down Camp Sargent Road open cut, not on the AC pipe, because as you're pulling that out, now it's hazardous waste and you have special people handling that. So we would want to go next to it, so you kind of still leave it in place. So that's one option. The other option is Continental Boulevard in between the existing line and the road, which will probably damage the road a little bit. So you're going to have some pavement repairs and working through the town on that. And then the third option is possibly getting an easement from whoever's the atrium now and running a line there. We cannot put the line in between the existing water main and the property line or the right-of-way, because that's where the telephone poles are. So you'd be right underneath the telephone poles, and the excavator can't work under those and stuff. So you gotta they like you to be 10 feet away from those. So that's kind of sticks us close to the road, or and then in that atrium we have successfully obtained easements from other people along that type of a route, because it's in a building setback area, so they can't really do anything in there in terms of a building. So it's a lot easier to obtain an easement for that compared to running something down the middle of somebody's property, so.
So would that be in any paved areas, or would that be off?
That would be off, you know,
Off the-
so then, and then what we were thinking about doing on that one is, because we're gonna have the directional drillers going underneath, Natticook Brook out behind the MVD maintenance area, that we can directionally drill underneath that, because that little ridge is all wooded, so we could, you know, we could directionally drill through there. The only problem is you'd wanna, you know, that's nice to say, but it's also nice to not have trees if you know, they have to go in there and maintain it, you know, you don't want the trees there, so. But that would be part of the negotiations with them and stuff like that, so. And even if we cut some trees, I think there's still a buffer there,
Yeah.
that there would be enough trees left in it, you know, for noise, I believe, is what their concern would be. So we're looking at those now, so.
So, we had talked about originally, there's 2 lines in Continental right now, besides that asbestos concrete pipe.
Right.
That's the 3rd line, right?
Yeah,
So there's 1 line that we were thinking of repurposing as the raw water supply line.
yeah, there's actually, it's not 2 on Continental, it's 1 on Camp Sargent and then 1 on Continental, but there's a
Okay.
parallel, right, because
All right.
those roads are parallel, yeah.
And the issue with one of those lines is that it does have some service connections connected to it, which we would have to cut off.
Yes, that was the other thing, we were thinking about repurposing that one, taking it offline as a distribution pipe and making it a raw water pipe. But they do have some services that are tied into that, which we'd have to transfer over and carry back to,
Right.
to Camp Sargent Road. But the other thing is, it creates a bottleneck in the distribution system in that area, and that was the main reason why the 16-inch pipe was put in Camp Sargent, to take care of the bottleneck. So with the connection of Pennachuck that you have and possible future use of that, you have a lot of supply coming up from the southern end of town. So you really need that.
So is
that
the
pipe.
bottleneck only when wells 4 and 5 are offline and all of the water's coming from the south to the north?
Yeah,
Or-
that's when you have
So
the
with wells 4
bottleneck.
and 5 are actually in activation,
That helps out.
we're not seeing that bottleneck you're talking about.
4 and 5 will help out, but 4 and 5 are your lowest yielding wells. So you're gonna have 7 and 8 coming from the south, and then now 2 is gonna be hard piped
South.
back in south to the treatment plant,
That well
and then
three.
tied in. So you really, you know, so then the need to have that other. So Camp Sargent has a 16 and Continental has the 12. So you really need to maintain that
So you-
12 with it.
Putting all that flow through that 16-inch pipe, whereas now it's going through a 16-inch plus a 12.
Right. Yeah.
And it'd be more flow than what we have now,
Right.
because you're bringing well 2 down,
Yeah.
right?
Than any other future use of Pennachuck that you end up using in the future as demand
I kind of
develops.
like the idea about maybe approaching the atrium property to see, you know, maybe pick a route that might work.
Mhm.
Because when you look at that, repurposing that 12-inch line in Continental and reconnecting those service connections and the bottleneck issue, it just, you're saving the excavation along that whole run, but you're still gonna be digging up those service connections and reconnecting those, and
And getting those across
it's
continental.
still kind of a lot of,
Yeah.
so I don't know, I'm thinking maybe the atrium location might, I'd like to explore that, I guess
Yeah.
is what I'm thinking. I don't know if you guys have any, it's not quite along the brook like you were asking last time,
Yeah.
but it's more, it is more in that direction. Might even be a little bit shorter.
Yeah, because you're not gonna, because if you use Camp Sargent Road, you gotta cross Continental twice.
Yeah.
Um,
In this case, we wouldn't really have to cross it at all.
no, you won't have to.
We
You
could
come up
probably
and
come
right
in through
beside.
the back, behind this building. and-
Certainly could do that. Once you get to
Wherever.
Greens Pond Road, then you could go down Greens Pond Road and then until you get to your property, then come right out, yeah.
Yeah. I guess,
That makes sense.
yeah.
So if we do that, do you want us to initiate contact with them? Do you have contact with them?
I do. Yeah, Greg's got a contact over there too.
Okay.
We can have him what, do you want me to put them in touch with you, or do you just?
Yeah, you wanna-
so-
Do you wanna show like a sketch where we're thinking, so you can show them and say, hey,
Yeah.
we're thinking of a
Yeah.
line over here?
We could do that.
I'll just make the initial call and then
Yeah.
give them your phone number to, find out, cause they'll want authorization to talk to them on our behalf.
Okay, yeah,
So, I can make the initial contact.
okay.
Okay, sounds
Sounds
good.
great, yeah.
And, you know, I don't know if the pipe bursting is dead. Do we need to look into that anymore and see, you know, we already found out, for instance, Massachusetts won't allow it, you know, they just plain won't allow you to pipe burst in AC main.
Because of the concern with asbestos.
Because of the
right?
concern with asbestos,
Yeah.
right. And I think it's important to remember in terms of, also in terms of the listening public, that asbestos mains that are in use are perfectly safe, you know? It's only when they are cut, that, you know, or you know, broken, and they release fibers, that you have a concern
Right,
with
yeah.
them. But, yeah, give us that contact, and we will chase that down on the pipe bursting, just to make sure that that is a non-viable option.
Yeah, because then we'll find out if they have any plans that might conflict with where we wanna put the water line, you know, so we might have to do a little back and forth, and then
Right.
hopefully if we can move forward, then probably do borings along the line to see if we have any bedrock or anything to be concerned about.
So they, when they did do borings, when they came out, they did them along Continental, with the thought that if we were gonna be on Camp Sargent side, you know, if we were to be doing the pipe bursting, then we really didn't matter what the soils were. And we also have some soils, or borings out there when the 16-inch pipe went in, you know, right? So we already had that, so they went along Continental, so we should be set
So
on that.
You didn't have recent borings done along Continental,
Yes,
you're
we did.
talking about?
Nope,
old one?
we
You
did,
do
yeah,
a recent one?
September, I believe, yeah, September it was
Oh.
done, yeah.
I didn't see any trucks out
Yeah,
there.
that's the one that I didn't realize was done, so.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah, okay. You must have hidden pretty well, cause
Yeah.
usually I go by there
So,
all the time, I
yeah.
didn't see anything.
Yeah, so they did that, then they, were out in the woods, doing, from well 2 out along that, sort of that woods road and
Go
where we were
automatically.
planning, yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe they were down in the back of the pit, or your maintenance area.
So I do have a question. The concern, the environmental concern for pipe bursting, I guess I'm kinda confused, because it's
in the ground.
It's in the ground,
It's in
the
and
ground.
you're just splitting it.
Yeah, so then.
You can abandon it.
Right, so what
in
they,
place.
you know, so some of the stuff that they're, you know, we have some EPA information, so once you, so if it's more, you gotta find out if the pipe has more than 1% asbestos in it, and I'm not, you know, so I guess you would probably take a sample of that and have to test it. But then if you're breaking up and pulverizing it, you know, and stuff like that, it all depends on how much it breaks up. Then they can consider that to be your hazardous waste site, because now you have broken up pipe. It's not solid. It's sort of like you're dumping something. And then, so that is, you know, would be a hazardous waste site that falls under a certain regulation that I don't have that right with me. And then after a year it's been sitting there, then it becomes an inactive, you know, hazardous waste site, but it still has to be registered as a,
So that
as
would
a
have
waste site.
limitations on being able to excavate
Exactly.
to it,
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's actually, the property is owned by the town.
Town of Merrimack, yeah.
I had the same question, Ron.
Yeah.
Because we
Yeah,
abandon
I
AC
know.
main in place
It's
all the
there
time.
now.
It
Yeah.
doesn't make
Right.
any sense,
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
it makes sense, but.
Yeah, it's just you're breaking it all up as you're going along.
Yeah, so that somebody else comes along, or you go and dig that up later, and now you could be releasing fibers to the environment. And there's certain, as part of it, there is the chance that some could be released during the pipe bursting back up.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Right.
back up the pipeline. Anyways, we will vet that, but it's not looking like a viable alternative.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, move on to wells 4 and 5, is that?
Just so you know, they do have the meeting minutes for
Oh,
4 and
okay, yeah,
5.
okay, yeah,
Just,
okay.
yeah, so I'm not sure how much detail you're gonna go into, but.
So it's the last meeting minutes that we did.
We don't need
Yeah.
to go, I mean, this is basically an update for you guys, so, you know, and I was gonna, you know, Pete's been coordinating with, you know, Pete is a construction project manager for 4 and 5, so he's the guy talking to him every day, to Joel.
Well, before you move on, just that pipe bursting thing, when we
Yeah.
spoke earlier, you said there was also concerns if there was thrust blocks or something,
Oh,
or encasement.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
They wouldn't be able to burst in those areas.
right.
Right.
So you'd have to dig and do a manual.
Yeah, so that, so if you do hit some areas where so every time you cut into that pipe, you have to have people that are trained, to be removing, and I imagine a few of your people are trained on that. So you have to, so you have to remove it a certain way and take the pipe out, bag it and all this kind of stuff and dispose of it. So then as you're going along, and all of a sudden you're bursting, and all of a sudden you get to some of these, maybe ductile iron fittings that you can't burst through, then you have to dig down. But if that ductile iron fitting is attached to some AC pipe, now you're going to have to remove some more AC pipe. So you almost have to have not only the people that are doing the pipe bursting, but the cleanup people there, so you can keep the work going along instead of, we hit a fitting, let's shut down the pipe bursting, try to drag them in, and then get the pipe bursting people. It'll just be a lot slower and a lot more expensive. So then you're gonna have to have two crews there. And then with the pipe, the concrete encasement, there's a note on the record drawings that AC pipe going across Continental it says on the note, it says may be encased in concrete. So if that is, then there's no way we're going to pipe burst across Continental. So then we would have to do some other way to get across Continental. So
Yeah, I didn't know if you were aware of all that too, so I just wanted you to.
So I think if we went that route, there would be a lot of unknowns, and there'd be a lot of changes and probably change orders along with when you get into the construction. We're not going to walk into it with all of the knowns. It's going to be some unknowns and fingers crossed and hope we fit through. So.
Thanks for explanation.
So on well 4 and 5, in the interest of the gentleman with the Patriots journey, sweatshirt on, and knowing that's coming, if you have the notes, do you have questions? Is there anything that you want us to go over on 4 and 5, or are you kind of good on the? I mean, it's underway.
So those notes are from the September meeting. So then we had an October meeting that I haven't done the minutes to yet. So so there is some.
Yeah, go ahead.
Some update on
yeah,
that.
I just didn't. If you guys didn't want to hear it, then we didn't need to talk about it.
I can go quick on that. So
All right.
yeah. So the site has been cleared. All the trees have been removed. All the stumps have been removed. And those are the only thing that we allowed to go off site are the stumps and the logs. So everything else is staying on site. They have the existing buildings have been demolished. Those are gone. The existing wells are still there. The footings for the new building are in. They're hoping to have the foundation completed by the end of the week. They're forming up the walls right now, and they're currently working on some site piping. So that's kind of, they're working on the gravel road that we have kind of looping around. So they're kind of doing that to stay away from the people working on the foundation. So they're working on all that right now. They have submitted their Evoqua shop drawn, and that's for the treatment vessel. So we do have that. We have worked through that. So we received that not last Friday, the Friday before that. So we have all of our comments completed, and what Penta has asked us to do on that is, so we have some questions and they need to supply some more information. So instead of sending it back as a revise and resubmit, which takes a lot longer to go through, they said, let's work through all the the questions you have. If they need to provide more data, they provide more data. We attach it to the shop drawn. So when we're finally done with it, we can send it back to them and say furnish as corrected. So then that means it's approved, it's going ahead. So I just emailing back and forth with Penta. So they told us that we can actually contact Evoqua directly and go through all of our concerns and then just send them a summary of that. So we're planning on doing that on Wednesday.
And just by way of explanation, typically, we have to deal with the general contractor, not their subs, not their suppliers, So we get the contractor's permission in order to do that, and then that makes it easier and we can streamline the process.
Yeah.
Good.
So, and Penta's very cooperative with that,
Yeah.
So.
Good.
Yeah. So we have that. And then.
Well 4, you want me to hit
Yeah,
well
why
4?
don't you do it?
So, well 4, and Ron's aware of this, and I don't know if the commissioners are, but at the progress meeting, Barry Miller, who does the work for most of the well work, brought up the fact that, gee, well 4 is over 50 years old and has a liner screen because the original bronze Everdur screen that was put in had corroded, and you were actually getting sand and gravel being pumped from that well about 20 years ago, I think, is when that liner screen was put in, according to Barry. I'm going on memory now.
Yeah.
He did say 20, it could be 20,
Yeah, so
don't
that's,
recall it, but-
that would be a stainless steel, screen, more modern screen, 20 years, but as opposed to the bronze Everdur, which is what they used to use, and those things are corroding all over New England right now. And he's concerned, and we have in the spec to clean and redevelop that well. And he has some concerns that if he does that, what remains of that bronze Everdur screen could collapse, and that would disturb the formation around the screen such that you might start pumping sand and or gravel. And he is suggesting replacing the well, which I wish he'd suggested this to us before, because we weren't aware of this. But so that's, that could have he threw out numbers, I think, at the meeting of 100 to 150,000, 120 to 150,000 dollars.
120, 150, yeah.
120, 150,000. And what he talked about was trying to do a more streamlined replacement process. Typically, a replacement well, you move over 10, 20, 30 feet and then put in a well there. And it's a streamlined approval process compared to a brand new, large groundwater withdrawal that takes a while. But it's still, there's a lot of hoops to jump through, including a pump test and so forth. He is suggesting, and he's doing this in another town, drilling a casing right over the existing and then bailing everything out of that existing casing and putting a new well in the exact same spot. So it's really sort of a well maintenance, a well rehab in the same location. So he suggested that. And that's kind of where we are on this at this point. We need to talk to DES to see if that is indeed doable without a lot of permitting costs. And then we have to decide, obviously we know that, when we budgeted the project, we needed more money to get to where we are now. It was taken out of capital reserves, and I think the way it was left was if more money for contingency was needed, that was gonna come from capital reserve. So I think what we need to do on this is find out, what does DES say about doing this? What are the steps? And then if we're gonna do it, get I think Barry just threw that number out, and I think it's a high number, is my impression. And we could get a really better number on that to see if that's something that we want to do. If we felt that it was something that we didn't want to do, then probably, or we wanted to do it later, say budget it next year, we could go ahead and put the pillar adapter on the well and put the pump in and not clean and redevelop it so that we didn't potentially damage it anymore, and then do a replacement well down the road. But that is an option.
Well, actually, you still have some time. If you budget it if you pass it in March, right at the district meeting, then they could install it in March, April, because the plant's gonna go online in
True, yeah.
June, July. So there's a potential that work could be done.
Did you get a chance to talk to Jamie at all about, can well 5 handle 870 gallons a minute alone?
No, I did not.
Is that something that you've
Yeah,
discussed with him?
that was, we talked about that
Oh,
in the
okay.
meeting, yeah.
And the screen issue is only at well 4?
Yeah.
How's the screen on
Well 5 is newer. I don't know if it has a bronze Everdur
No, it
screen.
didn't.
Oh, it doesn't.
He said it did not.
Oh, okay, Barry did?
Barry did, yeah.
Okay.
Do you also know if Barry has ever done this particular thing where you re-drill an existing well?
He's doing it right now in Franklin, New Hampshire.
Okay.
And that one is that's an old typical Whitman and Howard well, if you've ever run into one of those. Those are all 24, I think it's a 24-inch gravel pack. It might even, I know he's driving a 4-foot casing, so he's got to get,
Yeah.
he's got to, yeah.
I know, exactly.
Yeah, because his casing has to be big enough to get around all the existing casing and then be able to pull everything out from inside. So he's doing that now. And as far as I know, that's not a there aren't regulatory hurdles, but I don't
I
know
was more
that.
curious about this, how successful it was in maintaining the yield and everything, you know? I didn't know if it's something that he's never done before versus whether he has done it. Looks like there's only one.
I don't know if he's done it in other locations. I know he's, when I heard this, I gave him a call and talked to him at length about
Yeah.
it, and he's doing it there. And there would be, he says if he put the casing down and he tried to, then he would latch on, and he's sure he could pull out the new liner screen, but he's pretty sure that when he tries to pull out the old screen, it's going to break up.
Really?
And then it's a question of bailing out as much of it as you can get. A little bit of bronze Everter screen remaining in the aquifer wouldn't be an issue, but
He was gonna try to jack the old casing out,
inject
the
the
old
casing.
12-inch casing out.
Right.
And he
Yeah, because
doesn't,
he's gotta put a new screen and filter pack around there and then pull
yeah,
the casing.
right, so he's
Yeah.
gonna put a 24 down there, then put a smaller casing in it, yeah,
Wow.
so.
Yeah, so this is all, I mean, it doesn't impact moving ahead with everything on, on the construction, but we do need to chase this down and see if it can be done, see what the cost is, and then we can come back probably sooner than the next meeting, we'll be in touch, but, and see if this is something we wanna do.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
And then I wasn't aware of maybe we don't even need well 4, and we could get the same yield from well 5, so.
It wouldn't affect the timeline for, being up and running, in July for the treatment.
No, I don't think so, and, it would depend, I mean, if you, to go ahead and do this, I imagine it would be, I don't know, a month, long process, something like that.
Then it all depends on, then what the state requires you to do for testing, so that would be the,
Exactly.
that would be the
That's
big
kind of the
thing,
kicker,
yeah,
the
yeah.
unknown at the moment.
Okay.
But if it did go through, your plant could still go online with well 5, which is higher, your higher yielding well, so that,
Have you had a discussion with Jamie on pumping?
no, I
Okay,
haven't.
all right. Because I know, I was under the impression that, what did we pump from that, 600, 625, I think, from that well.
Or something like that, but I know it's the whole aquifer is a limited aquifer anyways, but I know it was permitted for 870, but I don't know if that's the combination of the two.
Yeah,
So
All
we
right, so
might
we'll
be able to get it all out of 5 and not have to worry about well 4.
that would make things simpler. Okay.
That's my understanding is that both wells are considered like one source, basically, right?
They are. When they did their wellhead protection area, which they did for all of your wells back, I don't know, before 2007, well 4 and 5 was considered, they're looking at the aquifer. What can you withdraw from that
Yeah,
aquifer?
yeah, okay.
So the permitted production volume is based on both wells. Do we have anything else on 4 and 5?
I think that's it.
Okay,
So the construction is still pretty much, I was looking at the schedule in here, it looks like we're pretty much right on, cause the footings and foundation were
Yeah.
supposed to be in before November 1st or something.
Right, yeah.
So
Yeah, when they laid out the schedule, they said, yeah, this is what, our schedule, we think we're doing better than it, so, like, good. But I think the critical path item is that vessel. They're gonna have everything ready, waiting for the vessel, so that's why, we're, approving these shop drawings and
The
and all
carbon
that.
vessels,
Yep,
two of them,
exactly,
right?
yep,
Yep.
so that was the big thing to get
Okay.
going on that, so we keep that online, then once we approve the shop drawings, then we should at that point, once they get it in there, we should get a, production date and delivery date, or, then
At
we
what
can
point
start
do you think
tracking
they're gonna
that.
start doing the, block work?
So it'd be,
concrete work?
they already started that, so I'm guessing if they're gonna be finished with that, the walls by the end of the week, so probably early November, they would be doing some of that.
Good.
So they had to, once they get the walls up, then they're gonna have to do some site work around there and stuff like that to bring that up, to grade, because if you went out there, the footings are, usually you go down into a hole for the footings, and the footings are close to grade, and the walls are going up, we're gonna have to fill around that, so,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I went out and looked at that and saw.
Yeah,
that.
it's a little bit different, so they have to bring in that, that fill to bring it up, so then, the masons have something to work off of to do their
Yeah.
walls, yeah.
Yep. Great.
Okay, 7 and 8? So you wanna do that, or you want me to go through this?
So we do either or.
You go.
Okay.
You're closer to it.
Okay, so the preliminary design that's, has been, submitted, and then we also just submitted the 60% design. So that was, we are targeting, delivery date on that in November, and, we pushed it along to get that done a little bit quicker. So we're about, 4 weeks ahead on that one. So, the building addition is gonna be pretty much a straight addition onto the building. So it's kinda looks like a barn, it's gonna look like a longer barn. So, the, roof line is gonna be the same, so it's not, the addition's gonna have the same height ceiling, so that's gonna be the same. And we're gonna have some additional windows on all 3 sides of the addition, to have a little more light coming in. Then the HVAC, which is putting some additional heaters and dehumidifiers out into the new room. Based on talking with district staff, I guess the existing 500-gallon LP tank during the winter, that runs out fairly quickly, and needs to be filled. So that's a little bit, it's borderline being undersized. We're adding twice as much load to it. So instead of going, we had to do something else out there. So instead of sticking a 1,000-gallon tank in there and still having a problem with, quick, turnaround on deliveries, we're going up to a 2,000-gallon tank and sticking it there. So you should have plenty of LP for all that, and
So is that
kind
gonna
of eliminate that problem.
replace the tank that's there with a 2,000?
Exactly, yeah. So then we'll just, during construction, we'll just coordinate that, because you don't use really much heat, in the summer, so we'll just have a temporary one there, because you still need that to be heating your hot water tank for your eye wash showers. So we'll have them set up a temporary, small little bulb sitting out there for that, and then we can pull out the tank and then put that new tank in there. And another, good reason to replace the tank is because that tank right now is sort of in your parking lot. It's in between the road going out back and where you park. So if you start adding more tanks to more width, you start to take up more of that area. If we can just pull that tank out, pop a new one in there, you really don't lose much room. Obviously, it's a longer tank, and a tad bit wider, but it's going to take up the same distance, horizontally and stuff. So that's kind of like that idea. Putting in 2 15-foot diameter GAC vessels, and then there's going to be room left for 2 12-foot resin vessels in there. Probably could fit 2 15-foot diameter resin vessels if we need it. So the reason we went with 15-foot diameter vessels is we couldn't, when the state came out with the new regulations and having to, because these are your levels are high enough that
Right, so
you
we need lag tanks.
need
Lag.
lag. So if we have limited space that we can expand out, and then still, so we went with 15-foot vessels to avoid having to go with, more than 2 vessels, because if we did that, we would have to go with, like 4 vessels and stuff like that. Certainly make a bigger area. So we went with 15-foot vessels. The one challenge with a 15-foot vessel is delivery over the road. So they only can travel, certain routes and all this kind of stuff, and so there's going to be a lot more coordination on trying to get those vessels to the site itself.
Where are they
But-
coming from?
They come in, I forget what they said. Where is it planned?
I don't know. Of Oakwood? Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I think it might be Pennsylvania.
I think it is too. So
Yeah.
so it's not close by, so they're going to have to do,
But the
some
thing is, I don't know if that's
coordinating
where they're
Yeah, they do.
their tank supplier. Okay,
It's,
I-
at
'cause I
least,
know-
it's either there or it's Georgia. For some reason, those 2 states
Right, I
are
was
sticking in
thinking
my
somewhere
head.
in the
Yeah,
south, okay.
yeah. So they have a decent trip up here. But they say they have done that before, and they just got to map out the proper route to get here. So, so we said, okay, that sounds like the better option. So we went with that. And then, so then we have, the piping in there. It's set up to accommodate, tying into the resin. So, when you need to put, the resin tanks in there, the way that you put them in, because it's such a tall tank, you really can't have a knockout in the wall for that. So the roof's going to be designed same as the roof at 4 and 5, that you can take the roof apart and plop the tank into the building. So,
One thing I would say was if we need to put
It
the
is,
rest of
yeah,
it, as
yeah.
opposed to when we
Yeah,
have to
right.
put the rest of it, okay.
yeah. So, and then as we were laying out the site, we out in the back of the building, we left a nice big flat area for a crane, because you got limited flat area out there, so you left a nice area that a crane can be sitting to put those into a building. And we also left in the wall, we ended up putting a knockout in there. We put a 12 by 16 knockout in the wall, facing the existing infiltration basins. And the reason we did that is, so if, technology is just really getting going on this PFAS. So they certainly can come up with some new technology, and maybe something is available on a skid or something like that. So we wanted to leave, an option that, hey, maybe we instead of taking off the roof, maybe we just knock out the wall and something can get, inserted into the building that way. So to build a knockout, it's all the same block, you're just putting a lintel in up top and stuff like that. So I think it's sort of cheap money to give you another option,
Would that be
in
for
case.
replacing a tank or something, or if
The
there was
vessel,
something
if you had a
different?
vessel that went, the roof would have to.
Yeah,
to
there's
have
no
to
way they
go.
can go sideways and stand it up or anything like that?
Yeah, those,
Just
20,
heavy.
27-foot tall tank, because there's nothing to really, because you have a wood truss roof, so there's nothing really to grab a hold of it up there that's gonna hold,
Yeah.
the weight to try to tip
So they'd
that
have to
thing
get a
up.
crane, drop it in.
Exactly, yeah.
We're thinking more along the lines of, a better RO system or something that may come in on a skid that could go in afterwards, which, I got in, Jamie was already well into the sodium and chloride discussion when I got here, but, let's say we have to treat for sodium and chloride, then something like that, maybe could be fit, through an opening like that. So we're just
Right.
trying to give you all the options that we can.
We'll probably think of everyone except for the one you need. We'll miss
Yeah,
that.
Oh, don't say that.
We're trying to think ahead though, trying to get those, so.
It's the 15-foot diameter vessels, that's a lead and a lag, or is that just
Yeah.
a lead?
Both of them,
Both of
15
them,
foot,
both
yeah.
of them.
Yeah.
Because before the 12, you would have needed 4, because it wasn't enough to have lead and lag. 15 has the capacity.
Yeah. And then one of the things that we found out is, so we started applying for the shorelands permit, because the infiltration basin is gonna have to go within 250 feet of the shoreland of the
Which is
water body. And so we thought we were all set with that, and then when we started to grab some information off the old shoreland permits that you had, when you did the project, found a note on that said, if within 10 years you go to build this infiltration basin and you extend beyond or within the 250-foot radius, then you would have to get an alteration of terrain permit. So, so now we're looking to try to work through that, and we're going to talk to them, and because alteration of terrain is mainly for erosion and stuff like that. So we're like, okay, so we really don't have any of that. We'd have a fairly small actual what we're doing, the footprint that we're working in. So maybe they can work with us. So if not, we either have to do an alteration of terrain permit, or we take that infiltration basin, instead of putting it behind the building, we put it on the opposite side of the road from the treatment plant. There's an area there that we can plop it. So
Do we
Yeah.
can we utilize infiltration bases that we currently have?
Yeah, the only reason I'm afraid of that is, so well, not a concern is, so you have the iron and manganese that you have there, and now you're gonna have to be, like right now, you probably need to be cleaning that out and disposing of it. And so all of a sudden, if you start mixing that up with, potential,
I mean, it shouldn't be any PFAS.
There shouldn't be any PFAS in it.
no, but it would be potential arsenic coming off of
That's true.
the cleaning, and then that will bind with your iron and stuff, and then you have a little bit of a problem that way. So I think it'd be better to have them going into. We are allowing piping, so you can do that, so there'll be valves and all the yard piping that you can go to any basin you want to, but the main operation is to continue using those two that you have for the iron and manganese, and then the new one is going to be for the PFAS backwash.
You wouldn't wanna technically bind up your arsenic and
I know.
get rid of it?
Haul it
Well,
out.
well, that was occurring to me. The only issue is whether that would make it a hazardous waste. We'd have to research that as to, and we are using carbon intentionally that came out the best in terms of our arsenic leaching, so. So I noted that down, and maybe that's something we should look at a little bit more as to using the existing basins and Dewey, because, we can vet that a little bit.
And I'm also thinking of if any future expansion as well, we're
Yeah.
taking up real estate
I was just
back
looking
there.
at that too.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask if, in the future, if we had to expand this building even further back,
Yeah.
could we move the carbon infiltration
Yeah.
basin further that way, but now you're into all kinds
Yeah,
of
so
wetland
I'm
protection.
having a tough. You can see the shape of that basin. It's kind of a long and skinny one because I'm working off the contours down by the pond, and then I'm working back up off of those to get to a road, around the basin, right? And then then we have the addition. So it's really kind of tight in there. So we are going to look at the option of sticking it on the other side of the road, at the bottom of your sheet,
Yeah,
on the other side of that road right there.
looks like there's a little notch there where the wetland kinda
Yeah,
goes out.
exactly. And I think that's where we can get that in there. And then that's outside of that, that 250-foot shorelands area. So then if we stay out of that, then we eliminate everything.
Keep away from the AOT permit.
Yeah.
Got some longer piping runs to do there, but
It's not that,
Not a big
yeah,
deal.
it's not that bad. Yeah,
would you come around the side of the building or something, or
yeah, so then,
can't
yeah,
really go through the building?
and so I'd have to look at the yard piping of how we have it, so, it would be best to go down, if you're looking at that drawing, on the right side of the building, because you got a gravel road there, then compared to coming down the left side of the building where you have the paved driveway. It'd be a little bit cheaper that way, but then as you're going down through there, then you cross the sewer, but, they'll be, in a driveway, you can be crossing all the electrical, so we'll have to look at, kind of evaluate that, which might be the better option.
Okay.
So that's another one. And then the other thing that we have with this one that we do not have with 4 and 5, and we will not have with 2 and 3, is there's no option to go to the sewer,
Right.
so everything has to be done on site, or if it can't go to the sewer, then it might need frac tanks, and so that area out back where I was talking about putting the crane, that's also big enough that you can put 3 frac tanks out in that crane pad area, then 2 more along the driveway, and we figure that you would need probably 5 frac tanks to be, for
Contain all of it.
for the containment, and then you would have to
Could we
haul that
sample
out.
it? We could sample and see what we have and haul
Yeah.
it out, or?
Yeah, so that's the only thing, so on 4 and 5, where we're hoping that everything's gonna be good and we can go to the sewer, we don't have that option here, so that would, if something did come up, we would have to go frac tank on that, so we wanna leave an area there, so so if we did move the infiltration basin, it does give you even more area out in the back for the frac tank. So it's, you know, that might be a win-win situation just to get that infiltration basin and move it right now.
Okay, welcome.
So, okay, and then when Barry Miller was at our project meeting, you know, he brought up the subject of, you know, doing some well cleaning with some other ones, and so I mentioned, I said, well, we're, you know, doing this, you know, addition on to the building, so, and we're gonna be replacing the pumps in there and pulling them out, so if we can hold off on that and kind of coordinate and doing it at the same time, that's good, but, so we're looking at probably a March, April, if I had to guesstimate, March, April 2021, when, you know, we would be needing to do the well cleanings and stuff, so.
What did he just clean?
He just cleaned one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've been having to clean 7 and 8 almost yearly.
Wow.
I'm
Okay.
hoping maybe we can stretch it.
So if you can do it, if you can do a year and a half on that, then that would be good, you know, if you can do that. Yeah, 'cause I'm thinking at least on schedule wise, we're supposed to be, you know, out to bid like the March, you know, April timeframe, you know, of next year. And so then about time you open the bids and award it, and then the shop, again, the big thing is gonna be the lead time of the vessel, you know? So if you're awarding it, you know, sometime around June, they have to get the shop drawn in. If that comes in, say, July 1st, you know, because they were saying 4 to 6 weeks for that when we were initially talking to Penta. So if you say best case 4 weeks, 1st of July, then, you know, they say we're about 6 months to get. So if it's the 1st of July, all of a sudden it's the 1st of January, about the time the vessel comes in, you plop that into the building, and you gotta, you know, close things up, and, you know, there's not as much to do on the inside of this one as there is with 4 and 5, because 4 and 5 is a brand new one, but there's still this, you know, some additional work. And then they would be, you know, finishing that up during the winter, and then we would be looking at, you know, replacing the well pumps, and that would be the last thing before we put the plant online. Everything else will be ready, because once we replace the well pumps, and actually we could still replace the well pumps a little bit early and just run them down to the lower on the VFDs. So, but that would be somewhere around when they would do it. So maybe if you did need a site lead before, maybe we could, you know, coordinate that work and just run the VFDs, you know, lower. But again, that would be good timing wise, because 4 and 5 will be online, you know, and if that was during the winter months when your flow is a little lower, that might be good timing wise.
It's been right almost the April.
Go ahead, I was just, he's got a message from.
Oh, okay. We've been right around the April time that we've been getting them cleaned, so.
Okay,
Yeah. so
okay. Okay, so that might be good then. But we'll just work with you guys and try to coordinate that. So we'll just keep that in mind as we're working through it. And then we did an opinion of cost on the project, which includes, you know, contractor overhead and profit and a 20% contingency. So this should be what we're looking at for construction costs, not engineering on it. At the 30% design, when we did the preliminary report, we were estimating about 4 million. Right now, we're at 4.15 million. So that's just, you know, 150,000 more. And there is an area in there where there's a potential structural component that the price can go down. Our structural engineer, her husband, just got diagnosed with lung cancer. So this was happening last week when we were packaging up everything to give to you. So I didn't want to push her. So I'm like, so there's something out there that we need to investigate, which would be a savings off that 4.15.
We could both be carrying some excavation costs, the same excavation costs. She may be carrying them and we may be carrying them, and we just need to find that out. So some of that higher cost may be artificial.
Yeah.
So the 4.1, is that with the lag filters as well?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the 30% drawings didn't have the lag, did it?
Yes, it did. It did not have the resin filters, but it had the two 15-foot diameter ones in there.
On the 31?
On the 30, on the initial evaluation, what do we call that? That was
The feasibility evaluation, we didn't have them then, but the 30% design, we had the 215.
Cause that came, the 30% came after the June.
That was
Right.
when we submitted in
FCL.
August of this year.
Yeah.
Was it 30%? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was in there. And then, you know, one of the things that added into it was the well cleaning, because we didn't have that component in there, you know? So it was an extra, we were carrying an extra, 40,000 plus the markup, so there was probably 45, 50,000, and just the well cleaning that bumped up that number, then, you know, a few little things, so.
So I was just gonna mention for the record, I think Wolf is signed off right now. Is that what
If
he's
he
saying?
hasn't signed off, he will be. It was right around 7
Right.
o'clock.
4 minutes
There he
ago.
is.
Oh.
It's,
Oh, I didn't know you
All
were
right.
here.
over here and I have to get up at 5, so I think,
Yep. We appreciate you sticking it out, Wolf.
I
Um,
appreciate the flexibility.
I don't think there's any other issues we need any votes on tonight that I'm aware of, so I don't think, so yeah, thanks for participating from Germany, and what time is it over there, like 1 or 2 AM or what?
It's 1 a.m. now, yeah.
1 AM.
Night.
All right, thanks,
All
Wolf.
right, thank you guys for the update.
Yeah,
Okay.
good night, Wolf.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
How did he know he was on there?
Pick up and,
Yeah.
So the last, unless,
So that was it, that
That
was
was
it. So anything else on?
so if you have no
7
more
and 8.
questions, the only other thing that's on the agenda, I don't wanna cut off, are there any questions on
I
7?
didn't have any questions on 7 and 8, no? Good.
There was just the update to the council that we'll be giving, actually mostly Keith and Don will be giving Wednesday evening, although I will be there as well. And I think, I see you have copies of the presentation in your packets. And I don't wanna go through it, because then we will steal the thunder of going through it on Wednesday evening. We did go over it with Don this afternoon on the phone, just to make sure that we were all on the same page, and whether there were any questions and any issues that, you know, needed to be brought up that weren't on here.
So this is primarily just to, it's more of an update, to update the town council on everything we're doing.
Yeah,
Wells 4, 5, 7 and 8, 2 and 3, turkey booster, and then to kind of bring back the idea at Wells 4 and 5 where we are allowed to connect our treatment plant to the sewer, but not the carbon backwash. There'd be no backwash allowed to go into the sewer, but we can put our
Yeah,
Our
we can
restrooms.
We can install, you're right, the
Restroom
15-inch line, but there
Yeah.
isn't a physical gap between that.
So the good news is we don't
Yeah.
need that sewer pump station that was in the design,
mhm.
which nobody wanted to have a pump system over there. But the design is gonna be configured so that we're just gonna leave a section of pipe omitted. And in the future, if we wanna go back and we'll have data to show them on our backwash water quality, maybe we can reapply to get a new industrial use permit that might allow us to discharge our filter backwash into the sewer. But right now, that's prohibited, so they're just allowing sanitary sewer to be discharged into the sewer. So there's some information in the handout here, or in the PowerPoint, that shows what the expected arsenic concentrations are going to be from the media that we selected, the carbon media. And so I think that was information that they weren't sure about, and then we're gonna talk about the reasons why we picked the specific carbon that's being used out there.
Mhm.
One of them is regenerative process, so that it can be regenerated. The other one it's a relatively low arsenic level, and then it actually worked. It's one of the better carbons that actually had the longest life to filter out the PFAS from the column tests.
So there's a bunch of factors that we're looking at. It's not just the PFAS, removal. That's very important, but
Right.
also arsenic is important, and regenerability in terms of not having the legacy issue with the carbon you can't regenerate going somewhere where you could end up responsible for PFAS somewhere else.
Right.
So, And the purpose, we wanted to, let the town council know everything that the district has been doing, because you're doing a lot, and you have been doing a lot, and, you've got a lot of projects, like $24 million worth of projects coming up. So we just wanna, give them a high level, here's what's going on, and also bring up some of these issues.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. To kind of know where the original, $14.5 million on the warrant articles, you add the lag tanks, that's another 3 million, so up to 17.5. The Turkey Hill boosters.
Turkey Hill booster.
Included in there, and then we got $1 million overrun on wells 4 and 5 that the Saint-Gobain agreement didn't quite capture all of that, so when you add all those numbers up together, it's definitely up there.
It's up there, yep. So we'll go through all that on Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Alright.
It's a special meeting because normally they're on Thursday night, but
Okay,
this week,
this week,
Yeah.
it's Wednesday night.
right. What time is that? Is that,
It usually starts at 7, so
Okay.
I think we're second on the agenda.
okay.
Yeah.
And that's
So I guess
all?
I'll plan to be there at 7.
Yeah,
I don't know how quick the first thing's gonna go, so,
Okay, we'll plan on being there for 7.
yeah.
And unless there's any questions, that's all we had.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
we're good.
Excellent job.
All right,
Thank you for the thorough, assessment.
yep. Thank you, Pete. For getting here.
Yeah, no.
All right.
Don, did we, since Wolf's not here, did we table
Huh?
the?
That's right.
the,
No, did you?
next meeting?
Okay. Actually, that was Jamie's clip.
Yeah, I guess next would be,
Oh,
well,
I'm jumping ahead, we got Cinco de Mayo.
Jamie's.
yeah.
I thought I saw his case.
Hopefully not on his driving glasses.
Let's see, I can look at a credit card sale.
Oh, let's go shopping.
There's no name, but you think it's Jamie's?
Yeah, he was in there.
All right, I will make sure he gets it.
Oh, nice, thanks.
All right, okay.
All right,
All right, take care.
good, thanks.
Speaker.
All right, moving along, next we're gonna talk about the, update on Saint-Gobain main, water main extensions and private well hookups. You
Yeah,
got that
it's
one?
just, it's pretty quick.
Sure.
The Saint-Gobain water line extensions of Wire Road, Knollwood, and Ridgewood are complete. There are 5 services left to install, and the contractor is waiting on directional drillers and a tree guy.
You got it?
I got it.
Hey.
Yep. There's a, actually, Joe, you know more about this one. There was a letter that was sent out by Saint-Gobain. There's additional, residents gonna get
Oh, yeah.
for water. Water is available to additional, residents,
For connection, or are they giving bottled water?
given bottled water. So there could be some future connections coming up as well, probably
Yeah.
next year.
Are those homes that, remember we decided to extend the water line down, what the heck road was it?
Wire Road.
Wire and Bryant.
Is that area, do we know if that area is going to be required to be connected to our systems
I
now?
don't know if those letters went to,
It's sporadic, I think there's
Yeah.
some that they went
Yeah,
back and
I-
actually looked at the, well levels, based on, cause I think the letter goes on to say about new levels, they went back and looked at results from private wells or something like that, and so there's like a couple here and there that, I don't know if they refused originally, but there's at the end of Brenda Lane, there's I think 4 houses on there, that's right on the back side of Wire Road, so they were on
I'm
there.
just wondering if that extension that we agreed to put in is actually gonna play out, that we we're required to serve water to them, or Saint-Gobain's required to hook them up to the water line, which we gotta make sure that we, I don't know what costs we would put back on Saint-Gobain for installing that, but we kinda got a discount on that, and I don't know if we're obligated to share that discount to them if it requires, they should reimburse us if that line is required for those properties that need to connect, right?
Right.
Yeah. So just keep that, I'm sure you're
Oh,
aware.
no,
of it.
absolutely.
All right. Okay, is that it for that?
That was it on that, yeah.
Table the minutes.
And then the minutes,
I moved the table the minutes to the next meeting.
okay,
Just so you know, Wolf has had them, I did email him out, he's had them and had an opportunity to look at them, but I didn't receive any.
yeah, did
letters
you
from
see
him.
anything back from him?
No, so I'm not sure if he actually had any or if he's good, so just giving that information.
Yeah. I don't care either way, I got my.
I was just thinking because I'm Wolf, so you guys kind
Yeah, I guess I don't mind holding off, if you guys wanna hold off, so we'll just do that, wait till next month.
Okay.
What else we got? Old business. The only thing I had was, I was supposed to have a letter of thank you to the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund. And I didn't have a chance to put that together, but that's something that I wanna get out to them, just a thank you letter. And did we talk about doing a press release on the grants? Or a Facebook post or something? There was something that was supposed to be done before I went away on vacation. I know that we posted the MCL update on the website and did a push notification. Were we talking about doing something else? There was something else that we were gonna do, a push notification the next week. I don't think
Yeah,
it
we didn't have a
happened, right?
date or anything, we didn't have
What was
anything
it?
drawn up, it was about, what
I can't
our,
remember what it was.
what our financing, his,
Yeah, the Drinking Water Groundwater
yeah,
Award, the grant award and all that.
yeah.
You let everybody know on it Wednesday night.
Yeah. Yeah, at the council meeting, yep. I'll probably thank Bill Boyd for being on that commission and for advocating for us and everything too, so, yeah, I think that was the only thing that I wanted to follow up on.
I have a quick question. The zeolite, you remember did they
Yeah.
disappear?
I forgot, I should've asked Mike, but, I got a bunch of emails forwarded from Jeff to me, even though we kinda said, I think we said to make Jill the point person, give everything to her, and she would forward it to Underwood. So I forwarded all this information to Underwood, and with the expectation that they would review it, however, Mike was away on vacation for a week and a half.
Yep.
And he just got back last week, so I don't think, or the week before, so I don't think he had a chance to look at it yet, but, that is something I wanted to bring back up, and I was meaning to ask Mike if he'd had a chance to look at those, I'm sure he hasn't. But, I do wanna make sure he looks at that, and if it seems, if he's got comments on it, we can get back to Jeff and see if, from what I thought I remember seeing, he was still talking about doing the pilot test at a different, loading rate than we would design the full scale.
Right.
And that's the big problem I have with it, is we gotta make sure everything's apples and apples, so
Exactly.
however he's loading that in the real scale world has to be scaled down equivalent to his pilot test, and I don't think it was proposed that way.
Gotcha.
So I just wanted Mike to put his eyes on it and confirm everything too. There was a lot of information in there that Jeff had sent over, which I think most of it is not really applicable, cause it's really just those couple of little parameters, the contact time and the flow rate of the filter going through that cross-sectional area, and everything else was kinda extraneous information, but I just wanted to make sure Mike kind of agreed with me on that. So hopefully he can have something by the next, meeting. I don't know if maybe somebody ought to get back to Mike and just remind him, I guess I can probably do that.
I just made a note, I was gonna give.
Alright, yeah, if
I'll
you can
talk
do
to you
that,
tomorrow.
that would be good. Okay. So that was old business, I don't know if anybody has any new business. I'm good with that too. So superintendent's report,
There's a couple things. The pre-bid meeting for the Turkey Hill project, booster project, was on 10/16, and the bid opening will be 10/29, October 29th. We've hired 2 new employees. Jim Young was hired on 9/26, and John Foss was hired on 10/14. And the last thing is, I'm gonna be on vacation, 10/23 to 11/1. I'll be out
Good
of
for
town.
you.
That's it.
Okay. Questions from the public? Seeing none. Questions from the press? Seeing none.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Joe,
Second.
second by Ken. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Bye.
Meeting is adjourned.
They sound like pirates every time we go.
Arr.